Noi venim din viitor. Inteligență artificială, revoluție tehnologică, blockchain, realitate virtuală, bani digitali, Internet of Things. Vreți să țineți pasul cu noile tehnologii care ne schimbă viața? Stați cu noi la emisiunea Noi venim din viitor, prima emisiune de radio din România despre secretele viitorului. Cu Mirel Bran și invitații săi la RFI România, în fiecare vineri de la ora 5:30 la 6 și în reluare sâmbătă după știrile de la ora 11. O emisiune oferită de BRD, Grup Societe Generală.
Welcome to a new edition of the show Noi venim din viitor. We come from the future. The first show in Romania where we talk not about what was, but about what will be. I am Mirel Bran, and for the next half hour I invite you to look at ourselves a little differently, not from our past, but from our future. Imagine a country where every Romanian would be multiplied by 21, a country of 230 million people. Imagine a federal republic of 36 states resting on the Gulf of Guinea and the delta that gave it its name, Nigeria. Today, we will travel to this country with our special guest, Joshua Chibueze. Joshua is an entrepreneur from the heart of the African continent. I believe that Africa will be the future America. I come from the future. I know the way it is. There isn't much established yet on the black continent, so everything has to be reinvented. It's not just about business, but about survival through business and innovation. Joshua Chibueze is the co-founder and chief marketing officer of PiggyVest, the largest digital savings and micro-investment platform in Nigeria. He's also part of Endeavor, a global network for entrepreneurs focused on future unicorns. Joshua was invited to Bucharest by the Romanian chapter of Endeavor for the second cohort of their scale-up program. Joshua, welcome to Noi venim din viitor. We come from the future, where we bring, of course, people who come from the future. And welcome to Romania, man. Let's start with your first impressions about Dracula's land. This is a cliche, of course, but I'd like to know what struck you first and most about Romania.
A very interesting experience. First of all, it's cold. It's my first time in Europe, so I really felt the cold. I think from the airport, we went straight to the palace. That's the palace. What's it called again? It's called Palace. I'm not sure exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, Palace. A king had a summer house.
Okay, in Sinai. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was very interesting. We visited a couple of rooms. There's so much about history and culture and everything here. It was so nice. And then we came back. We stayed at Brasov. There was a car show happening. I think people were riding across the mountains. That was very exciting to see because we're actually starting something like that in Nigeria. It's called Sunday Drive. Right, so it was interesting to see it already happening at scale here in Romania, and that was very exciting. I took lots of pictures. I sent it to my colleagues, and they were excited. Like, oh my God, this is what we want to do, right? So that was exciting. And even where we stayed, it was very nice. And then we came to Bucharest, exciting place, exciting city. I was out last night. I think there was a day party happening and the energy there was very interesting. I love the city and I'll be definitely back. I mean, my girlfriend has been drooling and all the pictures and everything, and I would definitely have to come back here with her.
You will be always welcome to Bucharest. Bucharest is surnamed the Paris of Eastern Europe, but today I feel it's like most likely the New York of Eastern Europe.
Okay.
It's a special vibe.
So I noticed that Brasov is a bit more quiet.
Yeah.
Right. They're a bit more calm there. And Bucharest is a bit more fast-paced. So it's like the stark difference between Lagos and Abuja in Nigeria. Because I booked a cab yesterday night, and because I didn't come out on time, the cab just zoomed off. I'm like, oh my God, you didn't even wait. I had to get another cab. So I think it's just like Lagos and Abuja. Lagos is very fast-paced. Everyone is moving very quickly. I think that's the difference. But yeah, very exciting. Love it.
Okay, how can collaborations like this one between Romania and Nigeria help create the kinds of business bridges?
So we have some similarities in regarding how the way things operate around here, right? And discussing with the founders, there were quite a number of interesting things that are being built. A lot of people are building exciting things, right? So I spoke to a founder who is trying to simulate, investment opportunities for B2B businesses, and they're creating some sort of like game to actually teach people how to invest in stocks. That's something we could totally use. Even in my company far back in Nigeria, and we spoke about it already, right? So I'm just thinking about how I could incorporate that kind of thing into my own onboarding process to kind of like just teach people how to invest. And this is one of the ways I see that we can collaborate, right? So, and there's a lot more to explore. I'm in fintech. I've been in fintech for almost 10 years. There's a lot that we've experienced. Regulatory challenges here are far different from what we experience over down there. This is quite regulated. Different markets as well, because, our own market, we're not credit led. We have to buy things, pay for things up front. It's a bit different here. And we're just speaking about it this morning, and I think there's a lot that we can learn from the market here, which is already very regulated, and there's a lot they can also take from us as well.
What can African entrepreneurs learn from Europe, people like you, and what can Europeans learn from Africa? There's something that we did, right? When we initially started, we took the approach of, break things first and then seek help later, right? So we needed to validate our market, right? We're just a bunch of young people who finished from school and who wanted to build something for their community. And to do that at scale, we needed to obviously validate the product, right? And validating the product means you're spending the minimum amount of money required to do those things, right? And we were able to do that in our country because I think regulation somewhat permits for partnerships first. In contrast to that, I hear over here, you have to think regulation first, which means you need to be able to afford the fees, you need to be able to afford the partnerships. So I think the barrier to entry for creating products, is higher in Europe just because of all of these restrictions and regulations, right? I think there can be some form of sandbox, something that allows young people to create because they don't have any experiences. They don't have anything. The only thing they have is a unique experience, an experience they would like to see, a different way to bank, a different way to save, a different way to spend money, because they live these experiences. And the people in charge, the people who create policy, who create these regulations, they do not have context as to how these other people use money, for instance, right? So I think there should be a way to create an interesting sandbox for people to test ideas, right? And then if they are properly validated, then they can, get the required licensing, regulation, and all of the things required to continue to scale. So that opportunity to test, I think it's missing. Then because people cannot dream, right? Because they feel like they're already stuck. They can't do much, right? So I think that's something that, I don't know, maybe the Romanian government can look into, because it's something that I'd expect from the, from one of the ministries, right? To create that opportunity for startups to be able to test, validate ideas before they're able to get the necessary approvals. Yeah, this is a very important point. We are really over-regulated in Europe, and we spend a lot of time, energy, and money just to follow the regulations instead of creating the product. You're right. Many young Africans grow up with uncertainty, but in the same time with immense creativity. How does this shape the entrepreneurial mind?
Europe is a bit more advanced. In Europe, you don't need to create your own security, right? A lot of things are already set in stone. Unlike Africa, we literally have to do everything on our own, right? From when you're young, from when you get older, you literally have to walk out your own salvation by yourself, because there's no government coming to save you, right? So I think it makes us double our hustle, right? Because there's no security, right? There's nothing there. You grow up and you're being told, oh, go to school, come out with the best grades, and you have a path. And while that is true, there are cases where people go get the best grades and still don't have access to opportunities, right? So you almost have to create your own opportunities. And because you're seeing other people create, you then have to look out to how can you do your own thing, right? So for us, for instance, my mom owns a school in Nigeria, but I realized that I didn't want to leave school and then go help her manage her school. I wanted to create a different path for myself, right? Same with my co-founder, who's now CEO. Pretty much the same thing. We started out in school, very smart bunch of guys. He was building robots in school. He built an aeroplane in school for a science project. Did all sorts of interesting things. But then coming out to the job market, we just knew that if we decided to go work for a company, or we'd just be stuck there for years and doing all sorts of things, and no new value will be created. So for us, it was an opportunity to see what, basically, we understood what we wanted to see in the world. And that's a world where people like us can do things better with our finances. And we decided to create it, right? So it took a lot of failing and starting over again. I think we failed about 5-6 times before PiggyVest finally took off in 2016. So it took a lot of failing and learning to pick things up again and then figure it out, right? So because there's no help. The only option you have is to succeed or not. And, failing means you have to go and get a job.
Noi venim din viitor, prima emisiune de radio din România despre secretele viitorului. Cu Mirel Bran și invitații săi la RFI România.
What was the problem you tried to solve when you created PiggyVest?
Fantastic. So in Nigeria, for instance, the traditional banks will give you a savings account and a current account. They would also give you a debit card for your savings account, which means they were encouraging you to spend money. So people had no way of saving money. The options they had were they had to buy a wooden box, right, and put it under their beds and then put money in there every day. Or they do something called local ajo or a susu, right? It's basically where a group of people come together and then they pool funds together and one person takes the whole money. So for instance, let's say 4 of us, we pool 200 euros every month. And then at the end of the month, one person takes 800 euros. That's how it works, right? They do that for 4 months. So those were the options that were available, right? And we also noticed that young people were excluded from access to investment opportunities or even savings opportunities, right? So you find out that for you to get the best interest rates in the market, you have to have a lot of capital. And that was a huge problem for young people, which means they were disconnected from the capital market because they didn't have enough money. So what we've done now is to break down that barrier to say, you can start small. You don't need to have $10,000 to invest in stocks. You don't need to have, $1 million to do a fixed deposit or invest in commercial papers. You can start with what you have. So as a group, we then pool all of the funds of all our users. We have over 6 million users today. We pool all those funds and then we invest as a collective. And then we were able to negotiate better interest rates. And then when we're able to negotiate those interest rates, we pass on more back to our customers. So the value for our customers is they're able to get more interest rates when they use our platforms than when they use the banks. Now, the reason it's possible for us to do that is because we're digital first, right? You want to use PiggyVest today, all you need to do is download an app, as opposed to traditional banks where you have to walk into a bank branch, open an account, fill all sorts of documents. That's at the time. So because we're digital first and we don't have to maintain multiple offices, it was easier for us to onboard customers. It was easier for us to pass on the interest rates we're getting to our customers. And that's why people chose us, right? So ultimately, that was the major problem we had to solve. So we're saying, start small. That's why it's called micro savings, micro investments. You don't need all of the money in the world, right? And at the end of the day, we want to be with them every step of the way, from when they leave school to when they get their first job, to when they get promoted, to when they get their big break. So we want to be able to advise them efficiently on their finances. We're trying to understand how you save. We're trying to also understand how you spend. We're trying to understand how you invest so that we can accurately help you navigate your finances as you get older.
I'm a bit curious. You were very young when you start building this project.
23.
It's kind of a bank. In
23,
fact.
yeah.
Did you work in a bank before building a bank?
This is, one of the things I want to speak on, right? So, none of us worked in the bank.
Wow.
But we have successfully built one of the best banks in the country.
Chapeau. Wow.
So, we just understood things from the customer's point of view, right? It's not from the bank's point of view. It's just from the customer's point of view. Yes, how does the customer of today want to save? It's just the same thing as, I draw a lot of inspiration from Steve Jobs, right? He's very, very customer focused, or rather he was very customer focused. A lot of times innovation comes from just seeing it from the customer's point of view. How does the customer of today want to save? How do they want to invest? What are the options available to them? How can we help them make that experience better? So all we did was improve the experience of certain aspects of banking. That's literally it.
Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So you started really very small. What kind of money are you dealing with today?
Okay. In terms of funds that we're managing, we're doing around $450 million right now in assets. And it's growing very, very quickly. By the end of next year, for instance, we will be already number one asset manager in the country.
Great. Do you think the fintech is the new social infrastructure of Africa?
No. Fintech is a means to an end, right? I think it provides the pathway, right? It improves experiences, right? We're all looking for the best outcomes, right? But I think there's still so much that needs to go into creating the much needed infrastructure for fintech to even thrive the most. Some of the things we're starting to realize now is we have to join in creating infrastructure to enable some of the things we're doing. So we're also in payments. We acquired a company in 2020 and we got into payments just so that we can reduce our payment processing costs. We had to acquire our own bank. So we acquired a bank. And we're doing that. And we're realizing that, okay, we can actually create services that leverage this payment infrastructure that we have built, right? That could literally aid the country, right? So we want to invest in real estate. But the question is why? What's the data saying? So we're building an app that can help. For instance, Dirty December is very huge December is a very huge event in Nigeria. Nigerians all over the world want to come back to Nigeria and do things, right? So, which means all of the shortlets apartments are completely sold out. Hotels are completely booked out. Restaurants are booked out, right? So if we want to invest in some of this social infrastructure, right, what's the data and how do we manage the end-to-end process? So we're looking at what's the most sustainable way to be able to build these things, and we have to get the data. So we're building different applications that cater to these needs, that also help us grow our assets, at the end of the day. Because if all of the funds are passing through any of our apps, then we understand the demand and we can build more supply, which means we can channel more of our investments into new types of asset classes that we're creating because we're seeing the demand. So fintech is just a means to an end. There's still a lot that needs to be built, right, to be able to drive the economy, right? And, there's a lot of progress. Our FX is now a bit more stable. We're refining our own crude now, and the economy is getting better for it, right? So, but there's still so much that needs to be done.
Noi venim din viitor, prima emisiune de radio din România despre secretele viitorului. Cu Mirel Bran și invitații săi la RFI România.
You are also being part of Endeavor, and I'd like to know what Endeavor mean to you personally and for PiggyVest as a company.
Yeah, so Endeavor is a network of high growth entrepreneurs, right? You get into Endeavor when you reach a certain threshold, right? I think it's different for the different criteria for different countries. For us, for instance, last year we made revenues of over $35 million. This year we're on course to do revenues of over $55 million, right? And once you start to get into those categories, then you have access to a wider pool of also successful high growth entrepreneurs all around the world, which means you have the opportunity to network and, you know, feel out what your solution could look like in other countries. So for instance, if we're looking to expand into other countries, it's very easy to say, oh, hey guys, we're thinking about this country. Who do you think we should meet up there? How do you think we can proceed? That's something Endeavor can help you with, right? So for us, they're going to be very instrumental for our expansion plans. We're looking into some countries, and we already know they already have network of entrepreneurs in those countries. So they're going to be very, very relevant there. Also, our last funding was from an Endeavor entrepreneur, for instance, who is already successful in Africa and just wanted a piece of the pie. They invested about $2.5 million in us in 2023, right? So there is a lot of value being in the network. They are very, very committed to founders. You know, most, you know, VCs are, you know, investor friendly and all of that, but I see there's a level of care and concern that they have for founders and try to ensure that, you know, founders, you know, do right by themselves and succeed eventually. So yeah, well done to them.
If you had to describe the Africa of 2050 in one image or metaphor, what would it be?
Africa of 2050. That's a very interesting concept.
I said in my introduction that I believe that Africa will be the next America.
Yeah, so Africa of 2050, I think that, first things first, we're going to have one of the largest populations in the world. And we have a real massive opportunity here to drive change, right? We know what the world power looks like today. And I know right now there's just a lot of, you know, African aid, all sorts of things, right? But I think there is now the need for a lot more collaboration. There is a need for, because Africans want to build and we just need capital, right? We need mentorship. We need partnerships, right? Like there's so much that we can do. And there's a lot of resources here, natural resources, things that we can leverage, right? And now we're doing so well in fintech as well. You know, we're doing so well in energy. So I see an Africa who sits at the table, right, with the rest of the world and is also responsible for making decisions that move the world forward.
In this show, we often say the future you imagine tomorrow is the air you breathe today. What future are you personally breathing into existence right now?
I'm building a future where, so if you look at how, when you see rich people, most of them have financial advisors. They have people who are on retainer that help them manage their funds, right? These are people that have made a big break, right? They're doing incredible things, right? The average young person does not have that, right? They have to do everything by themselves and hope they get lucky. We want to help. That's the future I'm building, right? I want a situation whereby people can trust piggy vests from when they just get out of school to when they earn their first paycheck, to when they make their first $1 million, to when they make their first $100 million. We want to be with you every step of the way and guide you accordingly so you're not making mistakes. You're seeing exactly what is obtainable out there. You're seeing all of the opportunities and you're not restricted. You are seeing everything that you can do to get yourself to the next level, right? Because we understand your savings habits, we understand your spending habits, we understand your investing habits. We can, you know, encourage you to do certain things, you know, say, oh, you're spending a lot more money on groceries this month. We think you can invest maybe 5% of that money, right? And it can give you this, and this, because this company is doing this, that. So basically, democratizing financial advisement.
I was looking at you, and I remember my travels in the Black Africa. I've been in Togo and in Djibouti, and I was shocked to find people like you there, young people, very cool people. I mean, I came back to Romania, to Europe, and I had the feeling that everybody around me was depressed. I mean, we invent a lot of problems here, and we don't really enjoy life. I mean, I was shocked to see the simple way in which the African people succeeded to be more calm, more cool, and to look into the future. And here in Europe, we invent a lot of problems. You know, we have everything we want here.
So
and how do you explain this? I was shocked.
We're very communal in nature, and we like to enjoy ourselves, right? I was telling you, December is a very big deal in Africa, and even all across in Nigeria, and even all across Africa. I remember in 2019 there was Afro Nation in Ghana, right? So as much as we work hard, I think we celebrate the most little things. Whether it's a birthday, we're throwing a party. Whether someone just moved into a new house, we're throwing a party. Weddings have become a very big deal in Nigeria. In fact, our wedding planners are now going global, right? Planning the weddings. So there's this thing about communal living. There's this thing about we try to find the joy in the most simple things, and that's the world we want to see, really, and we want everyone to emulate, right? So yes, work hard, but find the joy in the little things, because life is short at the end of the day.
A very nice conclusion of this interview. One last question, a quick one, Joshua. If you had a robot that did all your work and you had all the time in the world for yourself, what would you do?
I'd play football, or I'd sing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Joshua,
or I'd learn to play an instrument.
Thank you for being with us on Radio France International Romania. Dear listeners, you heard Joshua Chibueze on the show Noi venim din viitor, We Come From the Future. Joshua is a co-founder and chief marketing officer at PiggyVest, the largest digital savings and micro-investment platform in Nigeria. He is part of Endeavor and was invited to Bucharest by the Romanian chapter of Endeavor for the second cohort of their scale-up program. Learn more about him and his projects at piggyvest.com. And if you want to hear something new and breathe fresher air like in the mountains, listen to this show, Noi venim din viitor, We Come From the Future. Because the future you imagine tomorrow is the air you breathe today. You can find us at noivenimdinviitor.ro, and this show is now also available as a podcast and on the YouTube channel Miralbran Radio France International. Click subscribe and discover what the future is made of to understand what you are looking for in this present. Regarding the future, here is the deal. Either we kill each other in a devastating war, or we build together something so beautiful that it can surpass any fiction. We decide this together, whether the future will be a story or the ruin of a dream. I'm Miral Brand, and I'll be waiting for you next Friday from 5:30 to 6 with a replay on Saturday after the 11 o'clock news, as well as on the page noivenimdinviitor.ro. Cheers, and rest assured, we come from the future and everything is okay.
Noi venim din viitor, prima emisiune de radio din România despre secretele viitorului. Cu Mirel Bran și invitații săi la RFI România. O emisiune oferită de BRD Grup Societe Generale.